There is a professor at the University of Georgia whose name is Han S. Park. University of Georgia, of course, is in lovely Athens, Georgia, but on any given day, there's a pretty good chance that Dr. Park is not in lovely Athens, but rather in the deeply, deeply, deeply unlovely city of Pyongyang, the capital of the horrific little tin pot, starve the people, feed the army dictatorship that is led by this guy, the man who gives jumpsuits and perms a bad name, Kim Jong-il. Even though Kim Jong-il does not take kindly to the foreigners generally, and even though he does not take kindly to Americans in particular, Dr. Park has still managed to get into North Korea more than 40 times, including since those two American reporters were arrested there 3 weeks ago. Laura Ling and Yuna Lee are American journalists who work for Current TV, which is Al Gore's sort of TV 2.0 outfit that's based in San Francisco. And on March 17th, North Korean soldiers arrested the two journalists at the North Korean-Chinese border. They have been in custody ever since, and now apparently they're going to be charged with hostile acts. Nobody knows what that is, but it's a charge that could send them to one of the infamous North Korean prison camps for, say, 10 years hard labor, or maybe even worse. Current TV is not saying diddly squat about this situation. Al Gore is not talking about it publicly. The families of the journalists are not talking about it publicly. Even the U.S. State Department is being rather lower than low-key in its public statements. At a press briefing this week, reporters had to press the State Department spokesman to even say that our government wanted the reporters released.
Do you think it's possible for them to get a fair trial?
Once again, we've seen press reports that there will be charges. We have not had that through our diplomatic contacts. We will continue to work this diplomatically and try and see if we can help our citizens.
Well, do you want them released?
Of course, we would like to see our citizens released and returned home.
Of course, we would like to see our citizens released. Of course we do. Did I forget to say that? And I'm not criticizing here. I mean, we do actually have to assume that everybody's being so tight-lipped about this crisis because there are sensitive back-channel negotiations going on somewhere, and everyone's trying to avoid any unnecessary provocation that could hurt the chance for getting Ms. Ling and Ms. Lee back home safe. I personally am about at the point of jumping up and down and setting my hair on fire. I am so mad about this, but I have the sense that that wouldn't help, so I will refrain. Except in my mind, I am not refraining. All right. Here's the truly amazing new news about the fate of Laura Ling and Yuna Lee, who, keep in mind, are not being held by some cockamamie guerrilla group or terrorist organization. They're not being held by some cartel that's looking for ransom money. They're being held by the government of a foreign country. Here's the new news about our prospects for leveraging a safe return home for them. Dr. Han Park, that American professor who has been able to spend so much time in North Korea, he tells reporters now that after Ling and Lee were arrested and concerns were expressed to the North Koreans about how the women were being treated, since North Korea is known for, say, starving people to death in prison re-education camps from which they never get to come home. In response to concerns about how these American reporters, Yuna Lee and Laura Ling, were being treated in custody, North Korean officials said, quote, "We are not Guantanamo." The full quote from Dr. Park, they laughed, quote, "We are not Guantanamo." That's what they said. That's what North Korea says now about Americans they've got in custody. Here's how that whole international standing thing works out when it's more than just political science, when it's more than just an argument, when it's the lives of two young American women 13 time zones from here in the indefinite custody of a government that sees America as its enemy. We inquire about how long they're going to be held, and they shoot back, well, it's been 7 years plus that you've been holding hundreds of foreigners at your offshore prison at Guantanamo. We inquire about charges. What is this hostile acts ridiculous charge? And they shoot back, well, at least we're bothering to charge them. How many of the prisoners at Guantanamo and Bagram and the CIA prisons have had charges brought against them? We inquire about how well these American women are being treated, and they shoot back by, what, quoting to us from the list of approved enhanced interrogation techniques, maybe? Quoting to us from the transcripts of Dick Cheney on TV saying waterboarding ain't no thing?
Do you think any of those tactics that were used against Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and others went too far?
I don't.
And on KSM, one of those tactics, of course, widely reported was waterboarding, and that seems to be a tactic we no longer use. Even that, you think, was appropriate?
I do.
There is a new president in place now, one who has very, 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 very different ideas about interrogations and prisons than Bush and Cheney do. But to a certain extent, the damage is done. We would never want Americans to be subjected to imprisonment for years in some foreign country without charges. We would never want Americans to be tortured. And if we're going to get back the power to stop Americans from being subjected to things like that, don't we have to make it clear that America believes no one should get away with treating people like that? I know that Washington apparently has no appetite for Senator Leahy's Truth Commission. But maybe the need to fix this is bigger than the appetites of Washington politics. Maybe this stretches 13 time zones into every corner of the world where Americans might find themselves in trouble and need some help.